Hello everyone, I'm Barbi Leo. Welcome to our 3 News Plus app. Today we're going to be talking about dangers of smartphones and social media and our kids. You know, we have overprotected our children in the real world while underprotecting them online. We have a friend of mine, Tressa Majka, with us today. She's with Champions for Childhood. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Barbie.
Of course, if you can tell me more about the organization, Champions for Childhood.
Sure. So, about a year ago, actually, when this book came out, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, some friends and I read it and were just so deeply impacted. It just resonated so truthfully with us about what we were seeing in our children and around us, and other children. And so he kind of goes into what we all see, right? Like we've all watched as the world has changed so dramatically. And a lot of it is, relating to the rapidly accelerating technology landscape and the way it's just impacted every area of our lives for us, but even more so for children.
Is that how this organization started?
It is. It is. So we read the book and, I shared it with some friends and we all just were so struck by how true it seemed and how also, he goes through all the things that we see that are not good, the increased anxiety and depression and isolation, even suicide that we're seeing in this generation. The statistics have just, gone off the charts in the last, really since 2012 is how he kind of breaks it down through an enormous amount of data. But I think what was so hopeful about it and is the solutions that Jonathan Haidt brings. And so I think that Champions for Childhood really rallied around that. And we said, hey, we can just get some people together in our community, just tell our friends and they tell their friends. And we think that the collective action of these 4 norms that I'd be happy to chat about can really change things for our children and our community.
That's how I was introduced to this organization. I attended a luncheon and I walked out of there alarmed and aware, which is what we want. We want more parents to be alarmed and aware because we need to protect our kids. And I have to share this information with everybody because I want them to be able to protect their kids. We want to give you the resources and the tools and everything that we know. What were some of the alarming data or facts or stats that you found so far?
So I think that we've seen the anxiety rates, we've seen the depression rates, we've seen the suicide rates. And I think that when we can tie it directly, not just through correlation, but through causation, through social media use among children and smartphones that children are getting really young, I think that it makes it something that we can actually address. I think that was the good news side. I think our attention spans have really suffered through the use of smartphones in our pockets all the time, and that's for adults too. But for children, who are going through their developmentally sensitive periods, and they're not able to, their frontal lobes aren't developed all the way. They're not able to make the same kinds of decisions and set their own kind of limits. In 2004, our attention spans were about 2.5 minutes. And now they're down to just like 47 seconds. They're just falling off a cliff. We can't put whole thoughts together. We can't process things. We can't critically think, because there are all these distractions and the dinging in our pocket all the time and the companies vying for our attention through marketing. I think one of the other statistics that really alarmed us is the correlation between trafficking and smartphones, especially with social media. The link between sex trafficking directly linked to social media was up 844% in just 5 years. And we thought, hey, this is crazy. And so I'm involved with another organization. I'm on the board of New Life Refuge, and some of the other women and Champions for Childhood are also. And we've been working with it for a number of years, and we've had a lot of success. And we're very excited about some of the changes that we've seen on the trafficking side. But what we are incredibly aware of is that we've got to stop this before it starts. By the time we've rescued these women, in our case, it's underage women, there's so much damage that's already been done. So our attention is focused on how can we stop this. And when we saw that trafficking rates are up 844% directly linked to social media, we thought, hey, this is somewhere that we can really make progress if children are not on social media, if we can delay and safeguard social media.
These dangers are definitely concerning. What have you talked about with other mothers, their concerns, and maybe give me a couple of stories that you've heard from them, personal stories, maybe something that they've gone through, their children have gone through with the danger of social media and kids.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Right here in our community, we're seeing things happen that should never happen. It's all over the place, but it's also right here. Children have been harmed by smartphones being in schools. They have access to so many of the children in their school and the entire world right from their pocket. And so, like, for example, a middle school girl in a locker room right here in our community was recorded while she was changing, and that was shared broadly. There was a middle school boy who was humiliated by a fight that was pre-announced and recorded and shared widely across multiple, social media platforms. Um, there was a girl who thought that she was starting to date someone online. She thought that she had a boyfriend online and she was going to meet him. And it turned out that it was a 50-year-old man who was actually planning to traffic her. All this is happening right here in our community. And we could go on and on. But the dangers are real, but the opportunity that we have to protect our children is also real. And through collective action, we can really make great strides.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you brought that up. What can we do as parents to help protect our children?
I
Of
think the
course.
four norms that we're really trying to establish are to delay smartphones for children until at least high school. And we're not talking about communication devices in general, flip phones, watches where you can chat with your children and know where they are, know that they're safe, they can reach you. But if we can delay smartphones, because that has the camera ability, the video ability, the internet ability, and the sharing on social media ability, if we can delay those until high school, if we can delay social media until at least 16, it needs to be past their developmentally sensitive and critical periods for the way that they're developing psychologically. We need to protect them from all of the issues that come with managing their brand on social media all of the time, from bullying, from all of these things that come with being on social media.
And I think that's what we want to do. We want to give parents resources. We got to give them options. Every parent's going to parent differently. We're not telling you how to parent, how to choose when to give your child a smartphone. I'm not if anywhere near ready to give my child one, but especially knowing all of these things are happening. But it's good to know there are other ways of communication. Can you tell us some other options that we may have that does not include a smartphone that has, the screen and the video?
There are so many, there's good old flip phones. I think they're starting to be called dumb phones. There are a lot of dumb phones that don't have all these capabilities. They're also lower cost. There are watches and there's Gab watches. There's even Apple watches, and all these devices have security settings, and it can be daunting. So delaying smartphones until at least high school. No social media until at least 16, even later if you can. It would probably be better for, the psychology of your child. And let's be honest, we need to set our own limits for ourselves too. Um, and no smartphones in schools. There is no reason to have smartphones in schools. It is the attention fragmentation, the social isolation, because it acts as a relational blocker for children who aren't connecting in the hallways and in lunchrooms like they normally would be. They're all staring down at the screen. So we're hoping for bell to bell no smartphones in schools. And then the one that is really exciting and fun to think about is we're really hoping to encourage more free play and more autonomy. Children need to be able to take appropriate risks for their age. We, like you opened with so eloquently, Barbie, we have really overprotected our children in the real world as the world has gotten much safer statistically in so many ways for our children, but we've underprotected them so dramatically online, and we need to step up. And now that we know, there was a time period where we really didn't know. Parents didn't know what these things were doing to their children, because for those of us who are a little older, we've seen technology change so much, and it wasn't like this for us. There are some really specific changes around 2012, I think, with the iPhone 10 that got released. with the front facing camera and like the like button on these social media platforms and things. They've really changed and rewired the way that we use them and that we experience them. So we need them to be out there playing and taking appropriate risk and negotiating relationships and figuring out things for themselves. And so there's the exciting thing too. It's not all just no. So smartphones, and
Yes.
I think it's choosing what device is appropriate for your child at their age and knowing that there are a lot of options. I think the collective action piece is so important because if your child at 8 years old is the only one or says they're the only one that doesn't have a smartphone, it makes it much harder, or is not on social media, it makes it much harder to say no. And we don't want to isolate them relationally. We want them to have friends. We want them to be engaged. We also don't want to be the main parent. But if we are able to say, and this is something that we are just so excited about with Champions for Childhood and the momentum that we've experienced is, no, I can point to, 100 other kids right here that also, their parents are thinking along the same lines. It really starts to dramatically shift their relationships and the way they engage with each other and the way they free their brains to work. You were asking about statistics, and I think one of the main points we need to focus on here too is that the opportunity cost of where our children are spending their time and their mental efforts is has got to be freed. The CDC says that for 8 to 10 year olds, the average per day of screen time is 6 hours per day, and for 11 to 14 year olds, they're on screens for 9 hours a day. And that is the average. That's not the heavy users. That's not those that have problematic use or even addictive behavior. That's average. So if your child is spending 9 hours per day behind a screen, like what are they missing, in their relationships and in their thinking and their playing and all of that. So we want to recapture this time and help them reconnect with their friends and with books and with outdoors. We need to free them from really being captive to these devices.
And I agree. I know that a lot of parents, it helps, to give a child a device so they can do something, wash dishes or whatever. But you have to be
Yes.
aware of what your child is watching and who they're talking to on the screen all the time. If they're on the screen for 6, 9 hours, there's absolutely no way that you can keep up with everything that they're looking at or everybody that they're talking to. And it's alarming because I've sat next to my child watching YouTube Kids and I've seen inappropriate things. I've sat next to my child seeing other things and things pop up that are I didn't think that they would. Why are they popping up if it's a kids app? If it's a game that's and it's so alarming. We have to be aware, and I think that a lot of parents aren't aware. I wasn't aware. I know I shared this story with you and some of my coworkers when my daughter received a Nintendo Switch Lite, for Christmas. My younger brother gifted it to her. He said, make sure that you check the parental controls and this and this and that. And I said to myself, why? It's a game. Oh no, she can get online on that thing. What? I had no idea. If we as parents don't know, we can't protect our kids. And this is the reason why we're on here today, to make sure that these parents know that there's so many things out there that you have to look out for. I do have a question. I know that part of your organization, I know you push of not having smartphones at school. There's a lot of parents that want to argue, hey, I want to be able to communicate with my kids. What do you tell those parents?
Yeah, I think, there are phones in the school. We definitely understand. We've all gotten used to being able to communicate with our children all the time. But I think the distraction that it is for our children and for the children that are around the children on the devices, the teachers can't compete with that. We're seeing an avalanche of teachers retiring because they just say, I can't compete with smartphones. They're just trying to manage taking them from the children, all the time, and they don't have the focus. I think the most concerning issue that I hear from parents about having phones in school is, if there's an emergency, how am I going to reach my child? And I think that that's so legitimate and obviously so heartfelt. We all, have watched in horror as things have happened that we would want to know from the front lines what's happening as soon as we can. But I think there are phones in the schools, and also we're not talking about removing all communication devices from schools, just smartphones, because of the cameras, because of the videos, because of the internet, because of the social media platforms and all of the other distractions. So children could still have phones to be able to reach you. But also, I think it's really compelling to think about if there really is an emergency. The worst thing from an emergency management perspective would be having all the children on their phones with parents who don't really know what's happening and aren't able to really direct them. They need to be listening to the adult in the room who is managing the emergency and has eyes on the ground and is telling them how to proceed to keep them safe. The chaos of having everybody on the phone isn't helpful either.
You're right. They have to listen to the adult, and smartphones can be dangerous in a situation like that because when you're supposed to be very quiet, a phone can go off, and that will alert the person where they're at, and that's alarming. What is Champions for Childhood working on right now? Where is their focus as of this moment?
So we're really excited. We've been working with Todd Hunter's office on some legislation, and it has been officially submitted for this legislative session in Austin. So right now we're working on that. As soon as it's ready, we'll let you know, and you guys can call your representatives, and we can even go to Austin and plan a trip to go lobby there. But we're very hopeful that we'll get some legislation passed to get smartphones out of schools. We've been very supportive of the school boards and the administrations. We're so grateful for teachers, school boards, administrators. They have such a big job. So we're very supportive of them. And we did go to a lot of school board meetings last year and, tried to see how we can help to support them getting smartphones out of school. And CCISD does have some policies. There are some policies, so we're working through all of the bumps and how that works. But so getting smartphones out of school is part of it, and then providing guardrails on social media and age limitations on social media. It's maybe a little known fact, but actually there is legislation right now federally that children are not allowed on social media until they're 13. It's just not enforced. And so we're looking both at the age and at the enforceability of it. We also really just want to normalize these four things because, as you mentioned, nobody is telling you what to do with your children. I really see it as there are family decisions, and we're all going to come up with what works best for us, and we're hopefully going to help educate each other and learn together about, like you're talking about, I didn't know there were these different kinds of protections and security measures that we can take. And there are, on every device and then your home server level. And there are a lot of things that you can get into. So we can learn that together. But parents are ultimately going to make their own decisions at home. But it helps so much if you're not the only one who's not giving your child a smartphone or letting them on social media. And also when you are saying, yes, you can go down the street to your friend's house, or yes, you can go do that age appropriate, thing that feels a little outside our comfort zone at first. But we've all been doing those things, and it's been exciting, letting your kids go into a store and make a purchase by themselves while you wait, or, things like that. They feel very grown up. And I think it's been exciting to see all of us take age appropriate risks with our children. There's this wait till eighth movement that has a lot of really good elements. And I think that the only issue there is that eighth grade is kind of exactly the wrong time to give children, especially girls, social media or smartphones where they can access so many other people judging them all of the time, and where they need to have access to their friends and to their families and to other opportunities to develop their sense of self.
What I'm hoping is that, by us talking about this on this platform and getting that information out, it will help parents make that decision for their families, make the right decision. Maybe they were, on the fence, should I, shouldn't I? My child is this age, should I, the kids have it, their friends. But if they're aware of everything that's out there, maybe they weren't aware before, maybe it will help them make the right decision for them. And how can we work together as a community, as parents? Let's talk about collective action. What do we need to do? How can we work together? How can we be involved with, whether it's Champions for Childhood or whatever Todd Hunter is doing? How can we help? What can we do? How can we get
I think we
involved?
can all learn together. I would love to share. We don't have a website yet. We'll work on that, but we do have a group me. We would love for you to be a part of the group me where people can, just share some resources and some information while we're developing our website. But just as we're learning together, because there are so many opportunities to make the age appropriate, device appropriate, decision for your child, and to learn how to properly secure them. A lot of us are learning learning together to just some good norms with that. So when you do give your child a device, whatever it is, maybe having a family contract about here's when and how it will be used and how it will not be used, and then putting the right guardrails on it. There are a number of apps, there are a number of parental restrictions, parental guardrails that we can learn about together. So I think that is an opportunity for us to learn together. I think supporting our schools until we have legislation in place, it is school to school and school board to school board, and really, frankly, even teacher to teacher. And I think so. Just supporting our schools and teachers that we really do not want smartphones in school. We really do want them to be in school learning. Our national test scores have plummeted in all of this too. That's another statistic that we haven't discussed, but we're not keeping up educationally in the world as we should, as in the United States. And I think that the distraction of devices in the classroom is a big piece of that. So supporting our schools and our administrators, but then also just normalizing it so that our friends are, a lot of us have even gotten house phones so our kids can call each other, because we want our children to be relationally connected, but we want it to be synchronous, where they're actually connecting. That's another word that's kind of good around this, is asynchronous communication. When I'm posting and then you're posting on that, we're not actually communicating. Even like you and I are communicating right now, I can see your facial expressions, I can see your body language. You miss all of that when you're just posting and counter posting. And then when the legislation is ready to, right now they're kind of combining some bills, but when that's ready, then calling the representatives that are going to be voting on it and getting a smartphone ban from schools in Texas, that will be an opportunity. And also putting the appropriate accountability for social media platforms for letting children on. They're not supposed to be letting children on, and we need to hold them accountable. So if we can get that legislation passed, that will be huge. That will also take a huge burden off of schools, because they won't have to be making the decisions at that level. It will be at a higher level. But like I said, I really think it's important to understand, as you mentioned before, nobody is telling you as a family what to do, but we have our personal responsibility for our own family. And then beyond that, we have like our community, where we're saying, hey, these are the norms for our sort of group. If that's what works for your family, you're supported. And then there's beyond that, as we're really interfacing with each other, these things really do exceed the bounds of just one family or one community. When you see these anxiety rates and these depression rates and the opportunity that we're across, think about the intellectual capital that we're losing if children are on screens for 9 hours a day, mostly doing kind of useless stuff. We need to regain our minds and our focus in our relationships.
Absolutely. I know that you mentioned that Champions for Childhood, they have a Group Me page. We will have that information alongside this. But I think, aren't you on social media as well? Facebook, I believe.
Yes, we have a little presence there. We haven't really developed it, but yes, absolutely. Come join us there. We'll develop it. I think we do need to work on a website. I'm also happy to share the link for like some of the resources on anxious generation. And there's another group called Let Grow, which is focused more on that autonomy piece and the free play piece, which is really fun to think about, and is really fun for the kids too. It's very empowering for them.
Yes, we want to add all of that information, and this is just the surface. We're just touching the surface right now. We have way more information. There's so many neat things that pop up every day, and so what we want to do is we want to continue to bring you the latest tips and research and ideas for managing screen time and how to be a part of the solution here, and also how to protect our children. So we will have more information on this right here on 3 News Plus. So keep watching for more. Thank you so much, Tressa, for being with us today.
Thank you. This is such an opportunity. This is such a hopeful moment, instead of just looking at all of the negative and all of the statistics that are scary and all the things that we've observed. This is such a hopeful moment to say, hey, we can take ground here. We can free our children from this, but the collective piece is really important, and it's an opportunity to come together as a community to support the children that we love.
Absolutely. To protect all the children in our community. That is our goal. Tressa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Barbie.